we try to play to standards and not to an opponent. The opponent is the game. And so we try to play to standards. And so it doesn't matter who that other team is, doesn't matter what's on their chest. We have a standard we want to play to. And if we don't attain that, we could have won, but that's not our standard. And so there's, consequences to that. Try to be competitive about everything and hold accountable and have consequences when the standard isn't met.
Welcome to the Jamodi podcast. We are all surrounded by amazing coaches and leaders. So let's get an inside look at not just what they do, but how they do what they do. After all, becoming the best versions of ourselves is Jamodi, just a matter of doing it.
Today we are joined by the assistant men's basketball coach at Wayland Baptist University, Doug Galyean. Coach Galyean has 40 years of experience as a head coach, 36 years in the high school ranks, and 4 years at the junior college level. His teams have made 28 playoff appearances, won 10 district championships, and made 5 regional tournament appearances on the way to winning 736 games. Coach Galyean served 2 terms on the TABC Board of Directors and served on the THSCA Basketball Advisory Committee. This year, Coach Galyean joins his son, Clint Galyean, who is the head coach at Wayland Baptist. Before we hear from Coach, take a moment to subscribe to our podcast and follow us on social media at Jamodi Podcast.
Coaches, the Jamodi podcast is powered by Shoot 360. The future of basketball has arrived in Dallas-Fort Worth. Shoot 360 combines the latest sports technology with the fundamentals of basketball skill development. The result is a one-of-a-kind video game-like basketball program designed to improve your shooting, dribbling, and passing. Visit shoot360dfw.com to learn more and register for your free 1-hour workout evaluation. Shoot 360, the future of basketball is here.
How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Good. Just thank you so much for giving up your time, coming on Talking Hoops with me. This is an honor.
Well, I'm honored. You do such a great job with Jamodi. The podcast is awesome. You have some great people on, and just being included in that group is an honor, and I'm humbled by it.
Wow. Coach, are you saying that you've actually listened to a couple besides your sons?
I have, yes.
That's awesome. Wow. That's humbling right there. I appreciate it.
No, it's awesome. I love basketball. Basketball's been so good to me, and God good to me through basketball, and you just do a great job of promoting the game, and I love it.
Wow. Thank you, Coach. I got to ask, how many years coaching?
40. 40, yeah. Who would have ever thought?
40 years. Did you always know that you wanted to be a coach?
Real early, yeah. And like in my early high school years, I thought maybe I wanted to be a dentist. I spent a lot of time at the dentist office and had a really good dentist. I thought that'd be good. I could make money. But Coach Billy Arnold came to Castleberry High School the spring of my sophomore year, and he changed my life. And I had always loved basketball. Basketball had been an escape for me. And Coach Arnold saw things in me that I didn't see in myself and brought those out. And I owe a huge debt of gratitude to him, and I am where I am now because of him. At the end of my senior year, he asked me to help him work his camp. And the moment I stepped on the floor and started instructing kids, I was like, man, this is what I was meant to do. So I've never turned back from that. Never worked a day in my life.
Yes, sir. That's how I think a lot of us feel, but what a great reminder for us to be conscious of what we say to our players and to really take to heart the fact that, man, we can directly or indirectly really influence the trajectory of the lives of these young people.
Yeah, that's so true, man. The impact that we are able to have. And it's even greater today than it was 30 years ago. Just home situations are so different. Single parent homes are so much more prevalent. And so sometimes we're the only male figure in their life.
40 years of experience. I think you must have some daily habits that have helped you throughout the years, the high times, the low times, just continue to move forward. So what are those habits that set you up for success?
Well, I have to say that Bible study, the daily Bible reading, prayer is the foundation. And and the old devil will try to make us too busy and have urgent things that we feel like we don't have time to do the basics and stay in the word. But where you can really tell a big difference if you're move away from that, and a great difference when you just turn back and start that habit again. But that's a great way. I like to start my day that way. It's not always possible, but at some point in the day, uh, got to fit in Bible study. And of course, you can pray throughout the day anytime.
Yes,
The other
sir.
thing is just to show up, like show up with energy. It doesn't matter what if the kids were up late, if you were up watching film till 2 because of a tough loss the night before, or whatever the circumstance, don't matter. Just show up and have energy. And then I think high expectations. That's a habit that I try to have for myself and for our team. And I think that's one of the greatest gifts you can give people is high expectations and hold them accountable to that.
I love how you started with the Bible study, getting in the Word, starting off the day. You're right on the money, Coach. The days, or sadly, weeks in my life where I haven't been spending time with that relationship, and that's the way we've got to look at it, is as a relationship. And how many relationships grow or get better with no time, with no investment? And so, but when I'm not doing that, it's amazing how the problems just seem to be a little bit bigger. Situations just seem to be a little bit worse. But then the opposite's true.
Yeah, that's so very true. And I'm glad you brought relationships up because that's, when I first started coaching, I thought X's and O's were the end all be all. And that, if you found the right X's and the right O's, then you were going to be successful. And really what I found as my career has gone on is that relationships are much more important than the X's and O's. And if you have a good relationship with your players, you can get them to buy in and believe in things. And sometimes may not be the most sound, but when they believe in it, they make it work. And I've seen that happen time and time again. So yeah, my spiritual relationship is really important, but our relationship with others, and it impacts both of those.
No doubt. And it definitely impacts the expectations that you're able to have with your players. I can't imagine trying to hold players accountable or to let them know or to have high expectations of them if I don't truly either know them or have that type of relationship with them. Because what is it? It's the quote we've all heard. I think it's attributed to Don Meyer, but they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Is that Don Meyer?
Coach Meyer,
probably.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
is.
You can either say Don Meyer or John Wooden with most quotes, and you're close. Yeah.
Yeah. Coach Meyer ended up being a great friend of ours, and we got him to come to Eastland 3 times for clinics. Yeah, believe it or not, tiny Eastland, 2009, 2011, and then the very last clinic that he did in 2014 before he passed was here.
Wow.
Yeah, great man, great mentor to me, great friend.
I'd love to, if just off the top of your head, what are some things that when you were around him, you just felt that there's something different about him?
Well, that's hard to pinpoint one thing.
Or many.
Yeah, the greatest times were I picked he and Carmen up at DFW Airport, and so it's about a 2-hour drive back to Eastland, and so we were captive, in that Suburban, and the first thing he would always do is grab my planner and go through it and start, hey, you need to do this, Doug. Like, what? Here's something that'll help you. Like he was always giving pointers, and Carmen would be like, Don, he doesn't want you. But those 4 hours, coming to Eastland and then leaving the clinic and taking them back, and some just golden nuggets of wisdom that he provided. And I got to do that 3 different times, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. Carmen and I still stay in touch pretty regularly. She's doing really well.
I think that's always got to be cool when you finally get to meet the person that you've always wanted to meet, and they're not just like maybe what you thought, but even beyond that. And because sometimes you hear about heroes
or people that you look up to may be disappointing at times, but I've never heard that about him. And so thank you for sharing that little insight there.
Well, it was a real blessing to me. He was, and I still miss him every day,
Yeah.
but he impacts me every day as well.
And I think, speaking of showing up, kind of going back to those daily habits, like that is a great reminder for coaches that we are going to have tough days. And it's kind of funny when you see students outside of the school, like maybe up at the local store, they kind of stare at you like, what are you doing here? Yes, we have lives. Things happen outside of the classroom or outside of basketball, but what a great responsibility we have to show up and be consistent. And like you said, especially with our energy, because how can we have high expectations of our players and want them to show up the right way if we don't, right?
Yeah, that's right. I think Kelvin Sampson's the one that's famous for saying three people can't ever have a bad practice: the head coach, the point guard, and your best player. And so, like, we have a great responsibility to get prepared and show up and be great every day if we want our team to be.
One of my favorite, I guess it was a compliment that one of my former players gave me was he thought I was a robot. And now he wasn't saying because I had no emotion, which he did struggle. Emotion is one of those things that we want our players to try to eliminate negative emotion from their game, but then always like being fierce and showing off your love of the game or your excitement for your teammates. Man, we want to see that, joy. Well, he always took it as I didn't want him to show any emotion. So I had to work through that. But he thought that I was a little bit of a robot because I could show up and act the same every day. But you mentioned it early on with difference today being maybe the instability at the home of these players. Well, how about we become one of the most stable things that they have in their lives? I think that's a great role for us.
Yeah, I agree with you, Matt. That's very, very important. And stability, consistency is one of those things that I think is a real key in being a good coach.
I would imagine if you had guys like Don Meyer in your car and just already learning a little bit about you and your 40-year career, that you had a growth mindset and still do. What's one of those things that you've picked up or borrowed lately?
Yeah, I try to be a lifelong learner. I read pretty like I read a lot. In addition to the Bible, I've got a couple or three books that I'm always working on. So yeah, I try to be a lifelong learner, and I just love doing that. Best thing I've borrowed lately, probably a drill library, putting together a drill library. I had a drill notebook, and so like every drill, I'd have it written up, explained, all that. But I got challenged. I did some work with Randy Sherman with Radius Athletic, and Randy does a great job. If young coaches, even older coaches, if you want to learn, get with Randy. He's a great resource. But dealing with ramp, building a drill library, one page, so you got to eliminate some things that are kind of fluff, and it makes you really certain that everything that you're doing in practice applies to how you want to play. So the drill library in one page, it's really easy to plan practice, to sort through some things, and along with that, through ramp, having team pillars and having three pillars that you build everything around. And so then once you establish those, then that drives everything you do in practice. And if it doesn't apply to one of your pillars, then you don't do it.
I wonder how hard that would be for most coaches to go through and throw out drills, because I think we get emotionally attached to the things that we do, and maybe because our high school coaches did, or we went to a clinic and and this guy that we really look up to and won a lot of games said this is what they do every day. So gosh darn it, we're going to do it every day. But then maybe we don't ask that question. Does this actually apply to the way we play, to my personnel, my clientele? I think that would be challenging.
I'm telling you, it's very difficult. In fact, I put off the drill library for like 2 years because I would kind of sit down and look at it. And like you said, I was emotionally attached to some things. And well, that's what we did. And that's what we did way back when we went to the regional tournament or whatever. And so, yeah, it is very challenging it will kind of cause you to question exactly. But that's the greatest thing about it, is that you have to verify what you want to keep.
Yeah. I think when I started off in faith, I mean, I had the luxury of getting to play for great coaches and then work for great coaches. Jeff Clarkson was at Amon Forest, Plano East, now Prestonwood, and then the great Wes Watson at McKinney High School, one of my favorite people. And see, you smiled like nobody has something negative to say about Wes Watson. But learning from them and Tommy Thomas, golly, like one of the best as my high school coach. And so I came to faith really being confident in my practice planning, and it would be 2-3 pages long, and detailed out and to the very minute. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I remember handing it to one of my assistants who had been a coach for a long time, and he was like, "This is for varsity, right?" I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "All right, it's a lot, and a lot of it, they should know this stuff by now." It was just kind of a light bulb moment. Okay, like what ways can I simplify? What drills do I have that are separate that could be combined to where we're saving a little bit more time? And coach, it's gotten to the point now where it's, 6 or 7 things, five or 6 things throughout. But what I realized from that is they're my favorite drills. They really, and kind of what coach was saying, like they really bring together our pillars, but also how we play. But I get to get deeper into the weeds a little bit with those guys instead of just, oh, what's next? We got to stick longer, but I've got 13 other things. That's been helpful for me.
Yeah, that's a great point. I like that a lot.
Reading, trying to be a better reader. And so you have 2 or 3 books you said going on every day. Like, if you don't mind, what are any tips or habits with becoming maybe a better reader or somebody that, can, like, I look at Buzz Williams and he sends out his monthly or yearly book pick. I'm like, golly, all right, I'm on the same one from 4 months ago.
Yeah, Buzz will make me feel bad because he's like 4 or 5 a month. And no, I'll tell you what was really hard for me. I like paper books because I like to mark them, make notes in them, highlight them. But I had an iPad and I started getting some Kindle books. I read Kindle books on it. And so now with a 1-inch iPad, I can carry 4 books with me
Yeah.
if I'm traveling or whatever. So it was much simpler to do and made more sense. So it took me a while to wean myself off the paper, but you can still highlight things that you like, but that made it simpler. I try to read something spiritual. I'm reading a Max Lucado book right now, and something that's fun, that's a getaway, that frees my mind up. I like the kind of Vince Flynn, espionage, thriller type things. And it's just kind of a getaway. It frees my mind up. But also then if I find a good self-help book, that's a self-improvement book, I'll have one of those going too. Right now, I don't have one of those.
Yeah. But I like that you have because when you first said 3 different books, I was like, man, like, how do you not get those kind of mixed up, in your head, or to where like when you open it back up, you don't, it's hard to remember where you were, or maybe thoughts from another one. But if they are kind of different genres, that makes a lot of sense. And then, at the end of your month or so, or however quick, maybe your week, you're able to get 3 different books done, but that are different areas. I like that.
Yeah, it helps me. And I'm certainly not smart enough to read the same type of book, 3 of the same type. I would get lost.
Ryan Holiday wrote Stillness is the Key. Man, I tore that thing up. So many great nuggets in that. And then Ego is the Enemy is one that I just got the other day that I'm excited to go through. But watching a video of his, because the way that he writes books and the way that he takes notes while he's reading books is really interesting. But he said, you got to free yourself up to quit on books. And at first it kind of took me back, but his point was, like, if you're sticking on a book for so long, it's because it's not grabbing you. You don't want, you can put it down and you're struggling to get through. He's like, you got to free yourself up to give that up. And he said, if you are staying on a book for a long, long time, then it's just going to keep you from going to another one and getting through it. That's been something, it's hard to do because I almost feel like I'm quitting, not just on the book, but that author that spent the time, but maybe that'll help somebody out. I don't know.
I tell you, it helped me just now because I've got 4 books on my queue right now, and I've got one stuck over there that's the 4th one, and I haven't touched it in a while, and I need to give it up because it's done that, and I feel like I have permission to do that.
Yeah, and he said, he's like, it's not your fault that, and this is bad because I wouldn't want anybody to think this, I don't know, of The Leftovers or anything, but like, guy, anybody that's reading the Leftovers, if you don't like it, feel free. You're not hurting my feelings. You can let it go. But he said, he's like, if they didn't write a good enough book to hold your attention, then, I mean, kind of a harsh thought, but I do think I've held on to a book, not wanting to let it go. And he said, another thing he said too was to put it down for a little while and maybe you pick it back up. You know, that's a good nugget, I think.
That's an author that I really want to get into. I've heard great things about his books, and that's probably my next purchase.
Yeah, the Daily Stoic too. Like YouTube is, and that's where years ago I heard this, like turn your car into a mobile classroom. And so I don't watch the videos obviously while I'm driving, but I listen to him, and his stuff on YouTube, really good, Coach. I think you'd like it.
The Jamodi podcast is powered by Sideline Interactive. Sideline Interactive is the leading manufacturer for high-quality, innovative scoring tables and LED video display boards that help coaches and schools bring more excitement to fans, create huge fundraising opportunities, and make their jobs easier. Visit sidelineinteractive.com to check out their amazing products.
Yeah, we got into Don Meyer a little bit, but so kind of along those lines, if you had to choose, I know 3 is hard, but any number of characteristics that make a great coach, what would they be?
I think the greatest coaches, before I answer that, let me touch on this too, because I said God has been so good to me through basketball, because I got to be around Coach Knight, who I idolized when I was younger. And when he came to Texas, I'm sorry, but I'm a Texas Tech Red Raider, man.
That's okay. I have no problem with Tech, none.
Well, I'm thankful that Coach Drew turned down Kentucky because I wasn't sure what Coach Mack would do, and we really love him. I hope we get him.
He is special. He's special.
Oh, yeah, he sure is.
Yeah.
Anyway, I got to know Coach Knight really well. He was nicer to me than he should have been. He had 2 camps every summer, and I worked his camps, every one of them until he retired, and then Pat took over. I got to be really good friends with Chris Beard through all that. Man, I've been around some great coaches, Coach Meyer, Coach Knight, Coach Beard, now Coach Mack. I'm helping him with his camps, and it's really humbling. But here's what I think: demanding, like all of them are really demanding. Not necessarily demeaning, but demanding, and they're consistent. Like every day, like a lot of us that are, so coaches, will be demanding on day 1, but day 3, or the day you come in from a long road trip, and so it's the next day, and you let things slide, And I think the great coaches are consistent about what the details that matter to them, they'd never let it slide. So demanding and consistency. And then I think they're a visionary. The greatest ones are. They see a vision of what this team can look like. And it's always different every year, because even if it's a piece, if it's a player, but now, the way things are in the portal, it's way different. But once they see this group together, they have a vision of what the end result can look like. And so that vision then drives all their practice plans, all the things, all the talks they have to about the team. Coach Meyer always talked, I think he attributed to Dick Bennett, but see the picture, that's the vision. You got to sell the picture. So you got to make them believe in your vision, and then everybody paints the picture together. And then in the end, you have hopefully a masterpiece.
Coach, that's good. I've heard the see the vision, sell the vision. And I don't know if I've ever heard the third piece to it right there, but everybody painting it, that finishes that statement. Because if it's just me just selling it, well, now what do we do? I had my talk, But you're right. We are all co-creators of making that thing happen. Love those three things. And I think visionary jumped out at me with college basketball right now. And you alluded to you said the portal. And I think college coaches more than ever before have to be visionaries. Because they're starting over most time with brand new teams where they don't have the guys carrying the culture torch from previous years, or what these new players and almost the whole team don't know what the program stands for. So, not that they're ever lazy before it. So I don't mean that in any way, but I got to imagine that culture, vision of what the program is about, and that has to be on their mind more than ever before.
Yeah, it's such a dynamic time right now. Like, things are changing constantly. And like, look at John Calipari. It got him in trouble at Kentucky because he was still on the one and done guys. He had great freshmen, but now with the portal, coaches are bringing in experienced, mature guys that have been there, and you see more experienced teams. More times than not, playing it out in that first Monday in April.
Yeah, because you remember back to, maybe like 2013 or so, when Mercer beat Duke, and Mercer had that older team of guys. Duke was the young. It was kind of like the beginning of, wow, maybe an older, more experienced team can beat these one and done guys, these all-stars. But now you're right, with the portal, it's kind of like what junior college used to feel like. I think when Coach Bliss took over, like, he went out and he got Terry Black and DeMarcus Minor, those kind of big JUCO names, because he wanted to be older, better, fast. Everybody can. It's easier now to make that happen.
Yeah, it is, and it's happened so quickly that there's some people that are on the forefront of it and they keep being successful, and then some are still trying to catch up.
That's a great nugget, though. Good to be on the forefront of, or at least have your eyes open to how either the game, how the culture around the game is shifting and moving. It's hard just to turn a blind eye to things, and especially when there can be advantages in growing and changing. But then, Coach, what's the balance between, yeah, I see the direction that this is going, but man, I still like the way I do it. The old way still works. That may be a hard question, but what are your thoughts?
That is a hard balance because, there are old proven ways, but you can't get stuck in those. And you can use some of those principles. And I think your principles don't have to change, but your style can change.
That's a great point, because like Nate Oates sold out to analytics. Even with the way that he subs players in and out, he says, "Hey, 2 fouls in the first half, players get fouls. Doesn't matter if it happens now or if it happens later. Like, why would I?" He said the analytics don't support that. I love it. He's like, I'm not going to be a coach that takes a guy player. So like, there's guys like him that they take those numbers and that money ball approach almost, and they're all about it. But then other guys that still allow the mid range, or a lot of their shots are considered good if they're mid range. It is. I like the way you said, though. Like most things, balance, pick and choose what still works with your core as a coach. Like, not just be, I guess, reinventing yourself all the time, because players feel that, right? If you don't truly believe in what you're teaching.
Yeah, that's where it goes back to consistency as a coach, is that being you. And you can borrow from people and adopt ideas, but you can't just change and be somebody that you're not. Kids see phonies. They see through phonies probably easier than anything else. And so they know. And so you got to be you. You got to be real, but you also have to be that's where it comes into lifelong learning and being willing to change when you see something better.
I think that's a great maybe activity for a coach and their staff to do, is, especially if you've been at the same place for more than 5 years. Look back 5 years ago. How are we different? In what ways are we the same? I ask my players at the end of every season, the seniors, 3 questions. What's something you liked that we did? What's something that we did that we shouldn't do anymore? And what's something that you wish we did? And you can get a lot from that, but I think that's also helpful for your staff to think about. And just speaking of myself, I can see some changes that we've made for the better, but then also good to think, oh man, maybe we've lost a few of those pieces of, the culture here or the style of play or the identity that made us special. Maybe we've lost it. But if you don't think about it or ask those questions, maybe you miss out.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think self-evaluation and self-scouting your team, your program, like you can get lost, as the tide keeps going. And I think you're right. You look back and think, Lee, we used to like really believe in this, and now we rarely talk about it or work on it.
You mentioned demanding a little bit ago, and I do love that quote, be demanding without demeaning. Watching select ball this last weekend with some of my players, and it wasn't their coach, who was actually Coach Mauser from Timber Creek, kind of a legend. He's coaching some of our guys, which is awesome. It was the opposing coach. And I mean, there was just a demeaning tone. And I think, man, I hate the times where I watch film and the volume's up and I hear, even in the middle of the game, the way it sounds. Because I think you can teach in a way that doesn't make the players feel bad about themselves. You can still get your point across, but demanding, my question to you is, how do you continue that? Because you nailed it. Easy on day one, maybe easy on day 3, 5, but halfway through the year in district play, how do you keep that level high?
Well, I think you have to hold yourself accountable. That's like you hold your players accountable. There are standards, and that's one of them. And so accountability is important. You have to be accountable to yourself, and you're accountable, like you're the leader. And so you're going to set the tone. It's not easy. I'm not trying to pretend that it is, but I think if you have a passion for what you do, and I still do, you're 40, I'm still really passionate about the game, about teaching the game. I think life's a team sport. And so I think we're teaching life lessons that uh, the basketball class is, to me, the most important class they have all day. No, you got to read and write. I get that. But the carryover, as far as how you're going to handle adversity, because it's not a matter of if adversity is going to happen. In a game, it always does. But in life, it always will. And it takes on different faces, different forms. But the life lessons that they can learn through being on a team, playing a team sport. And to me, basketball is the greatest one of all time.
No, I feel the same way, and love the passion that you still have for it. And I think that's a goal of mine. Like kind of, again, looking back 5 years ago, in my short time or 16-year career, so not even close to 40, but I don't think the passion has changed. If anything, I think probably you feel like start to fall in love with it more and more. As believers, the challenge always to me is keep that love in the appropriate box. Where you rip open my chest, it's not a basketball there, because it's easy for that to happen. One thing I kind of jotted down about demanding is like being demanding of your players, setting a high bar, high expectations. It's outside of winning and losing. You can't only be demanding after losses. There's a negative piece to that. Let go of being demanding or having a high bar after wins, because that's where slippage happens. I think that special line or what maybe makes some coaches not better than others, I don't mean that, but coaches maybe in a different category, is that ability to be demanding regardless of outcome, because that's how your team continues to move forward. And when the year is done, no matter what your record was, maybe it gives you the best chance to still be successful.
Yeah, I think that's what, I don't know, several years ago, I stumbled onto it, stole it from somebody. You know how coaches are, but we try to play to standards and not to an opponent. The opponent is the game. And so we try to play to standards. And so it doesn't matter who that other team is, doesn't matter what's on their chest. We have a standard we want to play to. And if we don't attain that, we could have won, but that's not our standard. And so there's, consequences to that. Try to be competitive about everything and hold accountable and have consequences when the standard isn't met.
Coach, well done. It's almost as if you have the questions right in front of you and you're just flowing us right through this thing. Like that was perfect, because what's next is standards and pillars of your program. So I'd love to kind of hear from you the way that what you held your players accountable to, or what were the expectations to those standards?
Well, just respect for the game and the opponent. And I think we've lost that in some, in some ways, but I still think that's really important, to respect the game, to respect the opponent. Our main standards are play hard, play smart, play together. It's really simple, but simple isn't easy. Just because you say something simple, it doesn't make it easy. Like the Chicago Cubs manager years ago, they won the World Series. Madden, maybe? I can't remember his name. But he always wore a T-shirt, "Do simple better." And I fell in love with that, because that's so, like, coaches, we need that reminder all the time, because especially in this day and time, you mentioned YouTube, and during the college season, there are games on every night of the week on multiple channels. And so you can have your legal pad out and you can take notes, and you can have so many great sets, great baseline out of bounds plays, great whatever. And eventually, like, some point you just have to say enough. Like, we're going to be good at these things right here.
Yeah.
And that's it. And I think you have to be careful about just saying, Kelvin Sampson, like, you can be good at 3 things. So you pick 3 things and be really, really good at those. And you can watch his teams and you know what 3 they're good at. And they're really good. If Jamal Shedd hadn't gotten hurt,
Yeah.
I hated that for them. But play hard, play smart, play together. Our standards and our pillars, again, working with Randy Sherman, make or miss. We want to get the ball out and go. We want to put pressure on the defense and make them get back consistently. That doesn't mean we're going to necessarily take a quick shot, but if you let us, we will. And then from that, if we get stopped, we don't get a layup or a quick shot that we want by the shooters that we want, then we want to flow seamlessly into our half-court offense and not reset, but just be able to flow right into it, so that it's harder for them to be, them as a defense to get set. And then on the other side of the ball, we want to use defenses to disrupt the offense, to either create turnovers or create or force contested shots over us. And like Pete Newell said, to get more shots, get better shots than your opponent, and get more of them. And that simplifies things a whole lot.
So I love those pillars, because those, you have them down. I would imagine, like I think you said at the very beginning of our talk, that influences or directs the drills that you work on in practice. And for lack of a better word, it definitely simplifies what your aim is.
Yeah, it does. I think it allows you to be more focused. And then you can ask your players, in practice, like, hey, does that fit one of our pillars? Like, what are we doing? And it recenters them, refocuses them easily too.
I love the second one, because get out and go. We're actually writing alignment on all 3 of those. And get out and go, I don't call a play off a make or a miss. And we want to flow seamlessly actually into what we call flow. What I love about it is it just takes our primary, our secondary, and our continuity, all the same concepts. We're playing offense, so that there's not these different ideas or different things that we're doing. And because of that, you're right, it puts pressure defensively on the team, because even if they're a good transition team, they may not get matched up exactly the way that they like. Well, what happens when you pull out to set up your continuity or to run a play? Good defensive teams will make those corrections fast. So to me, how do you know you're racing, or how do you know you're playing fast, is when you're playing against a defense that is disorganized, or that look like they're in a panic or a hurry.
Yeah, that's great. I love how you explained the way you guys approach offense. We do have a lot of similarities in the way we approach things, and we need to talk.
Oh, I love it. That could be, I don't get into the X's and O's too much. And there's, I don't know if people ever wonder why or anything, but a lot of this is more about how you do what you do. And to me, you and I, because we're in alignment on some things, yeah, it could be a really fun talk, but I never want to. When I go to a clinic, I have to listen to just whatever the guy running it, clinician, there it is, the clinician is choosing to talk about. So if it's zone offense, all right, that's it. Like, I'm there for that time. I'm going to take notes. I'm going to try to get some golden nuggets out of it. But I get this hour or whatever with you. And so I'm going to hear the questions I would love to know from you. And so, but because of that, we don't always get to go some of those routes. But there needs to be a time where, especially with somebody like you, where we do go more into that, the way that our flow works and the positionless nature at it. And what are the advantages to playing that way over a numbered break? Like, there's a lot of rabbit holes we could go down, I think, Coach.
Yeah, there are. That's exactly right.
You nailed it too, though, with simplicity. Tyler Costin, I don't think it's not his quote. I just don't know who said it, but he said, simplicity is sophistication. And I think that sometimes we as coaches are guilty of. It's good to want to be a smart coach. There's nothing wrong with that. And to have your team run good actions. But man, we can overcomplicate it to the point where our players, it's the whole thing. They're running plays, but they're not making plays.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what we picked up years ago, is like, we want to teach them how to play more than we want to teach them plays to run. And we think that way that you have a chance daily to get better, because if you use that approach throughout the season, then by, end of February, March, when you want to be really good, you're making plays because it's something that's become second nature to you.
Yeah.
And you can stop plays.
Especially when alignments are different. All of a sudden you get in a box or 4 across. I mean, golly, like, it doesn't take a lot to realize like something different, something new, and how cool it is to be almost unscoutable. Now, a couple things here over the years, like with this kind of 5-out flow. I had a guy ask me from United Basketball to do a deep dive on it, and I instantly and that's what a great activity for a coach is pretend, or if somebody was to say, hey, 45 minutes, you need to explain your system. Like, can you? Like, do you have it down kind of like you did? And I realized, man, I've got a lot in my head, but when I can take a team through it, but do I have it down to where I can teach it to maybe like a screen or a group of coaches? And so that was a fun exercise. But I realized something is it's not a half court offense. It's a transition offense. It's leather touches our fingertips. We are flowing. And the problem with that is like, it was really hard to get just a group of clips together that show several actions. But the whole idea, and you kind of nailed it, is simplicity allows us to play fast, gives my players freedom to make quick choices. And what takes their freedom away, in my opinion, is a lot of choices.
That's very well said. You have to be disciplined to be allowed freedom. And so that discipline comes first, but we want, like, the ultimate goal is we're giving you all these choices, like, you get to read. And
Yeah.
so it becomes so much fun when they learn to make the defense wrong. Then it becomes kind of a cat and mouse game. I like that. Let's do, we'll try this. And so whatever the defense takes away, that opens up something for us if we learn, how to read, how to play off 2 feet, all the things that I think are necessary to be a good player.
You're right on the money. And I actually misspoke. I think I said too many choices. No, like too many commands. Like too many commands. And Chris Oliver, Basketball Immersion, had a great point. He said you don't want your players to have too many musts. Like, they must do this, they must do that. But rather, we want them to have possibilities, and setting our guys up into those situations where, man, either or. Like, I think our offense is running well and flowing, where players have 2 choices that either one, at least, that they choose, like, we're okay with. If they're forced into a must situation, like, all right, we're crossing our fingers that this decision's going to work out. I don't know. I like possibilities.
Yeah, I do too. I like if thens.
Yeah.
If this happens, then you have these two, like, you don't want to give them open-ended, but yeah, a couple of choices and you can be right either way. But yeah, possibilities, that's a great word to use.
I'd love to ask this for, especially being a student of the game and being able to see it. And this is not, I'm not calling you old, coach. I'm not doing that, but to see it over the decades that you have, where do you see the game going now?
Man, that's a really good question. Because like age is a number, and I still feel the same passion as I did. But when I started, one team made the playoffs. There was not a 3-point line. So I've seen a lot of changes take place. I would say a shot clock in high school is probably pretty close to being on a reality in Texas. People outside the state may be thinking, what's wrong with y'all? We don't. But I would say that that's kind of a trend that's moving that way. My hope is that in the next year or so, couple of years, the pendulum starts swinging back to a more finesse game. It's just gotten to so that so much physicality is allowed and physical play not called, that I think we've gotten away from, Dr. Naismith probably not real happy. Man, if you watch Big 12 games, but it
Yeah.
filters down like it's just a fist fight almost nightly. And I still love the game, but pendulums tend to swing. We go one way and another, and hopefully the officials call it a little tighter, and so finesse plays a bigger factor once again.
Man, I love hearing that. And it's really interesting because some of my favorite basketball memories were the late 80s, early 90s NBA games where the stuff that they were doing, it was just, they were common fouls. That we're talking flagrant eights now, and the Jordan rules, like all of those things. But to hear you kind of say that too physical, and so that you think that the fouls or things being called tighter, like hand checks and things of the vein, you think that'll clean it up more to where skill is able to show more?
I think it can,
Yeah.
if we allow it to. I don't know. Sometimes things are hard to take back, but I'm still a believer that in a lot of things, the pendulum swings to physicality, and then it'll come back and we'll make some real changes, and they'll make hands stay off and allow skill and finesse execution to trump just
beating up a team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's funny you say that, because I watch those videos all the time of Larry Bird driving and Bill Laimbeer just clotheslining them, and they're just squaring off and going at it. So yeah, that was a time.
Yeah. That's what the question of like, how would Jordan do today in the NBA? He would crush it.
Oh yeah.
I mean, he would shoot so many free throws, and his physicality, would just be so hard for guys to stop. That'd be fun to see.
Sure would.
You mentioned a couple changes that you've seen, going from one team or 3-point line. Is there a way that, especially high school basketball, or way, or maybe a rule that you wish we could go back and that would have not happened? Like it wasn't a positive change. And maybe it is something like, 3-point line, or
I don't know. I don't look backward very well.
Yeah.
I'm always looking forward and trying to learn and adapt.
How do you think the shot clock would enhance the high school game today?
I'm not sure it would enhance it. I'm not particularly for it. I just think
Okay. You think it's coming?
I think so.
Yeah.
I'm not a proponent, because I think it takes away some coaching elements of the game. But then, we had a regional final game in 3A Region 2 was Ponder and Paradise district opponents, and it's like 24-22.
Maybe we need it for that one, but
there's some beauty.
Yeah.
There's some beauty and good defense.
There's a purity. I mean, there's maybe like a purity of of just think of the value on every possession in that game, how important every pass and every decision. But the more possessions you have, it favors the better team. And But the big thing, because I do get that. Even I would be happy with it. I don't think offensively it would do much for us. I would love to not have to have such long defensive possessions. So that would be fun.
Yeah. I'm ready. I'm ready for it because then if you've got a shot clock, then I think we would extend our defense more, not risky stuff, but just like a 1-2-2, a 2-2-1, where they've got to take some time getting it across, and then they've got less time to run their sets or to do the things they want to do.
I think what makes me think it's good for development and players is the fact that overseas they're doing it at such a young age, and it's 24 seconds. And I still think we've got great athletes here, and the basketball's awesome over here. Basketball in Texas is great, but you look at the NBA draft and you see that percentage of American versus foreign players. Man, it's evening out more and more. I definitely see a lot of those guys in the college game too, that are just the skill and I don't know, maybe I wonder what it would be like if we had a crop of players come up with that, forcing them to play faster, but maintaining control. Plays have to be quicker. You can't 5 or 6 changes of the floor for defense to make a mistake. What would it do to us as coaches? Like how would we evolve in that? I don't know. There's a lot of things I'm interested to see in it, I guess.
Well, it's a great point in the European and Jokic and Luka and my goodness. But this is an interesting story, and maybe too long to tell. But
no, you're good.
Max Lefebvre was with Chris Beard at Angelo. He was a GA. Came from France, and Max followed him to Little Rock. He followed him to UNLV for a couple of weeks or whatever it was. And then he was with him at Tech. And Chris's first year back at Tech, Max and I and one or two others were the only ones that worked the camp. It was going to be a small camp, didn't need a lot. So I got to talk to Max quite a bit. Max is now an assistant coach with the Timberwolves. So I was asking Max, how are y'all so fundamental? And he's like, Americans ask that all the time, but they really don't want to know, because in Europe, in France particularly, they use a smaller ball as they're younger, and they don't ever shoot at a 10-foot goal till they're like pretty old, and they don't use a regular size men's ball until they're older. And so they start with a lower goal and a smaller ball, and they work and they work and they work. And then as they age, in another couple of years, they'll get a one size larger ball, and maybe the goal goes up, 1 foot. And so I don't, as Americans, we're not that patient. Because I tell people that story, and they're like, well, we don't have time for that. Yeah, but you want to be that good,
I'm sure.
It's an interesting tale.
Yeah, I'm sure I've seen Brian McCormick. He's the guy that wrote the book Fake Fundamentals and the 180 shooter. And he's also one of those guys on Twitter that whatever, let's just say you put out a tweet that has your opinion, he's going to come around and just bring the other side of it. He's like that guy, but he does say a lot of things that make me think. And it's kind of that question of, well, man, we want our players to be more skilled. And then he comes back with, but we're not going to practice ever. We're just going to play a lot of games. He'll bring that. So I would imagine that'd be because he's worked overseas, and that's kind of where he does most of his coaching, that he's seen kind of what you're talking about.
Coaches, the Jamodi podcast is powered by Scoreboard Media. Scoreboard Media works with high schools across the country to run professional sponsorship programs on their LED scoreboards. Whether you already have LED and you just want to supercharge the revenue, or you want to use sponsorship revenue to buy new LED video scoreboards, Scoreboard Media can help. They work with sponsors and advertisers locally, regionally, and nationally who want to connect with your school's community. Email info@scoreboardmedia.com to start the conversation and see what's possible.
Balancing family and coaching life It's a challenge. And I've asked a lot of coaches this question, and it's really fun to see different approaches over your career. What was your way of balancing coaching and family life?
My number one suggestion is marry well. You got to marry somebody that's tough. Gayla and I will be married 38 years summer. So she's gone through a lot, but we had 4 children. She brought them to practice, when they were old enough to behave, the way they needed to. They rode on the bus with us. They sat on the bench, took towels and water. But otherwise, if they didn't come to practice, I might not see them awake that day because you leave early and you've got junior high games you got to go to, you've got responsibilities. And so having a wife that's involved, that is a part of the calling, and I really believe coaching is a calling. Some people get put out by that, but I don't think if you're not called to it, you can't stay with it very long. You'll stay with it a while, but you find another path. And that's okay. Coach Meyer told me this too. Like, if you don't believe coaching is a calling, wait till your child plays for someone who's not called to coach.
That's good.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Anyway, wives are the key, and because coaches have to do what has to be done, and sometimes you'd rather be home, but laundry's got to be done. You've got to you've got to fix the bracket for the tournament. You've got, there's just so many things to do, and summers are busier now than they've ever been. So be where your feet are when you're at home. Try to be at home.
Yeah.
But man, with coaching, that's really hard because you can go out fishing, and I really don't have any hobbies. That's why I'm still coaching after 40 years. But you can be out fishing and still you're thinking about, what if we did this with if the 2 and 3 like interchanged and then we flare screened, and you're thinking all these thoughts while the line's in the water, but you're still coaching, it's consuming.
I'm ashamed to say how many times I've thought about a new entry or a different way of doing our out of bounds plays during worship at church. Obviously I don't want to be disrespectful in those moments, but it's just so hard for your mind not to race that, especially when you love it. So anyway, yeah.
Yeah, you just stepped on my toes because I've used the back of the bulletin to jot down notes because I didn't want to forget.
You nailed it though, I think. And there's a couple things I've heard a lot of coaches say. Mike Neighbor said he almost got mad at me for using balance. He said, try to have balance. Like, what are you talking about balance? And your point, like, well, bringing together coaches that have those younger kids and bring them into it. And one thing, my wife's dad passed away 2 years ago now, a little less than 2 years ago. But when we were dating, he was a football coach for a long time, 30 plus years. And those dudes were, like there's a group of coaches out there that understand the grind. It's football coaches 7 days a week. But we were talking about how Jana would do, with knowing what I did and everything. He's like, she'll be a really good coach's wife. And I've never viewed her just the same way you've never viewed your wife as she's just a coach's wife. Obviously so important to us, but you're right on the money. Like there's going to be times doing this that it's challenging and there's heartache and you feel like you're letting everybody down. Well, you don't want to go home and feel that even more. And you want to go home to somebody that has your back. And man, Jan has always had that. I'm sure your wife has always had yours. But to kind of come back around, making sure that she knows that she's more important than the game. I think that's one thing Jana has done a great job over the years of letting me know those times where it starts to feel like this to her. And she calls me on it. And I love her for that.
That's awesome. That brings to mind the old Billy Tubbs quote. You may have heard it, but Billy Tubbs was almost as funny as Abe Lemons. Like he was a great coach, but also really witty. But he said he was at a clinic. He was talking about one night his wife just started crying and said, "You love basketball more than me," and just was kind of caught off guard. He said, Well, I love you more than track and field, but we won't want to get to that point.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. Yeah, I do love that you called it that. And I think the calling piece to me is when I feel like I'm not called to do anything else. Because I think that word called to do is what people maybe get uptight about, called to do this or that. And kids will say, I don't think I'm called to play basketball anymore. Well, I don't think you really, yeah, I don't think you really loved it. I think that calling piece to it is just like knowing that we're exactly where we're supposed to be. And sorry, just a quick little story, but there's a few times in my life where I really felt like I physically felt God's presence and pleasure in what I was doing. And one time was in Iceland, I'm playing, and I can remember it just dribbling towards half court and this feeling of like this calm sense of joy. Like it's kind of like in that movie Chariots of Fire, where he made me for a purpose and he made me to do missions, but he also made me fast. And I feel God's pleasure when I run. Like I felt it at that moment at that at half court, but I've also felt it sometimes during those moments when a player achieves or does something that we've been working on and you see the joy and I feel like I'm a part of that. And like that's where the calling piece to me is. We all know if you've done this long enough that there's a lot of times where you feel like, is this worth it? Like, why am I doing this? Real estate, I could probably make a lot more money and spend less time. But man, when it's a calling, you can't imagine being called to do anything else.
Yeah, that's so true. You know, two quick stories, if you don't mind. One is you were talking about you've been in what, 16 years?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I would have never dreamed that I would be here for 40. But like I said, I don't really golf. I don't fish. I don't hunt. I just basketball and family are really my hobbies and trying to be a good child of God. But when I was younger, I'd go to coaching school and they used to, at the regional meetings, the coaches would get their 25-year plaque. And man, I would be like, how in the world could you do this for 25 years? I couldn't imagine. And I've blown it out of the water, so I'm still here. But the other part about coaching that I think we sometimes lose sight of the impact. We were on a cruise a few years ago. We were in a hot tub. It was kind of a quiet place, and there was this kind of boisterous man, and there's me, my wife, and our youngest son. And this guy was bragging. He's like, "Yeah, I go on a cruise at least once a month. I make so much money to do this and that." So he's bragging about how much money he made, bragging about how many cars he had, how many cruises he goes on. So, and finally so what do you do? So I'm a coach. And he got really quiet. And oh, wow, that's someone that you never forget, you know? And it completely took him to another place. And it kind of still tears me up to talk about it. But like, he went from arrogance and braggadociousness to just like, wow, hope.
Yeah.
And you could tell that somebody had impacted him. I don't know if it's positive or negatively, but you could tell somebody had impacted him in his life that was a coach. And so that's a great reminder to us that, to be intentional.
Yeah. That goes full circle all the way back around to how we started this call.
Yeah.
By you as a high school player, never really thinking about you were going to be a dentist. Man, obviously would have impacted some people that way. I guarantee you people would be less happy to see you. I can't stand going there. It's one of my least favorite places to go, but I know the importance of the dentist, but just the people you've been able to impact because that coach saw something in you. Wow.
Yeah. Now I've got, I don't know, untold numbers of kids that played for us that are head coaches themselves now. It's
the tree.
Yeah, it's crazy. Just the number of lives they're impacting daily.
Yeah.
So you talk about humbling. It gets that way in a hurry.
Wow. This made me think of a play. I used to go to Bentry Bible Fellowship in Carrollton, and Pete Briscoe was the pastor there when I was there. The reason I loved Pastor Pete, was the very first time when we moved to Texas and we were visiting churches, went and sat there. He just happened to mention in that service that he played college basketball. He actually guarded Karl Malone a few times. And so the moment that I found out this dude played, I was in. This was our church. That's my pastor. But he did a play one time by himself, like a one-man play called the Bema Seat. And about on Judgment Day, when we are in front of Christ, what that could look like. But a big part of it was seeing the lives of people that we've impacted personally, but then watching the multiply effect of how, like, think of the person that influenced Billy Graham, and then all those lives that Billy Graham influenced is accounted for, like, to that guy, Joe. But it was like, and the whole idea now, and this is the character he was playing was a believer, but like most of us, not always living it out, not always sharing. Just it's a personal faith. And in that moment, he only had a small group. And talk about treasures in heaven. Those are the crown, like those are the treasures. And he wanted more treasure to give back and to show. But it just made me think of that. And I haven't thought of that play for years. But that is the coaching tree, is the amount of people, coach. I can't imagine the thousands that you have impacted because of the people that directly, you had play for you or work for you. Man, like, forget wins, which you've had a lot, and years, all those things. I got to imagine that's a good goal to have.
Yeah, that's still the most rewarding thing because, I love to win. I hate to lose. Probably hate to lose more than I love to win. But man, when former players come by, and you hear about things they're doing in their life, and they still call you coach, man, it doesn't get much better than that.
Ty Compton from Pikeville University was the first person I ever heard call them coaching paychecks. Like, those are coaching paychecks. When you get that text from a guy that maybe you had some issues with, but after a loss, that's the player that texts you and sees how you're doing. Like,
Yeah,
coaching paycheck right there.
that's a great way to put it. I wish there had been cell phones when I first started, because like it's you just lose track of people
Yeah.
because it used to just be landlines, and now with cell numbers, man, we're able to keep up. I've got a group of 3 former players that we're in a group text, and we talk every single day, and that's rewarding. But hearing from all of them is rewarding.
I wrote down the no hobbies thing, and that's a weird statement, coach, that keeps coming up, especially from guys I feel like that have done it for 20, 30, 40 years. It's like, if you kind of look for common threads throughout all these talks and with all these coaches, no hobbies is said a lot. What do you think it is about the profession? And I don't know this for a fact, but, like, I don't know, do the guys that are maybe well-rounded in their life, they have other things, do they stay in it that long, or is it the no hobbies that give you the staying power? I don't know.
I would have to lean toward that being the case, and the more rounded people have more opportunities to do other things. But I don't know. I'm really surprised to hear that that's a common thread, but kind of glad, because I know I'm not I'm not recommending that route. I think it's great to be, but I can golf for 9 holes maybe, but it's still, my mind's wandering back to how we're going to break that press.
How are we going to get out? How are we going to get out and go faster?
Yeah, exactly. But I don't know. I fell in love with basketball as a really young kid. My parents divorced when I was about 6, and I'm old. Like when that happened, like all of my friends had both parents. So I was odd, you know.
Hmm.
And it was difficult in some ways, but I got lost in basketball. Basketball is something you can do by yourself. And I found ways to slip into the gym. I would leave rocks in a window and be able to climb in. And so I spent hours and hours, and the gym was a sanctuary and a place where I could get lost. And I just fell in love with the game. And man, when my playing days were over, that's why I was glad I found coaching, because I don't know what I'd do without it.
Thank you for sharing that about your past. And I think you're right on the money. The danger for those people, and I would come, I'd put myself in that boat where the game was my identity. When I realized that was done, I was lost. And I was a little bit, I think our experiences, and again, I'm not upset with coaches that I've had in my life, that they're human and they make mistakes, and I was in a kind of a tough situation. But I was a little bit like, the coaching profession for me wasn't necessarily something I was looking forward to be a part of. And it took about a year and a half and 9 jobs of just being really lost and starting something, quitting something, and that's a dangerous habit to get into. And then all of a sudden it used to be called IAD in Carrollton. This big facility has 6 courts, and it's like on its 3rd or 4th name now, but they had a director of basketball operations job open. But one of the main things was to coach an 8th grade group of boys. The IAD force coach, that group, I was 24, 25 was my first team. Since coaching my sister's team in high school, she was younger than me, I had to do that. But that was mandated. That was my first team, and it was kind of one of those where, like you felt like, man, at that camp. This is what I want to do.
Yeah. I can't imagine what you went through in your time at Baylor and going through all those things, but coming out, man, look what a strong, dynamic person you are, and how you just keep growing the game.
Well, Coach Drew had a big part of that. I didn't see at the time how cutting edge he was, as far as how he ran practices and how he approached team culture. I mean, he was doing things back then that now are very popular. Coach Thomas, I mean, I knew what just a great coach looked like, because I'd been around him for 4 years. But thankfully, I'm going to shout out Jeff Clarkson and Wes Watson, because when I was working for them as a varsity assistant, my life was a wreck. And there are times, and they will never tell me, but there were times that I was not good for them, not good for their programs, but they didn't fire me. They met and then kept pouring in. And so again, going back to the power of coaches, I've felt that as a player, but even as a staff member, guys that continue to believe in and work with and not cast aside when, man, like if I was in their shoes now, I would think twice about having a dude like that stay on staff, and thankful that they stuck with me.
That's a great story. I appreciate you sharing that.
Get out and go. Love that idea offensively. So let's get a little bit into X's and O's here, and this may take us. My wife may be texting me soon, but get out and go. What in your opinion, what's the best way to on a made basket get it out of the net and up the floor?
Well, we don't want it to bounce. Like, we want to get it out of the net. I struggle with this at times, but I don't like to sign it like the nearest guy gets it. And we try to be pretty positionless. Some groups you can't be as much, but we try to be. So we're just the first guy that can get it, and then we want to get a ball handler wide and as high as possible, and kick it up, and everybody's running wide. Try to have a rim runner, or if it's a team that's not designed that way, then just the trailer will be behind. So we'll have a couple on one side, one on one corner, and then the trailer and the ball.
I love the conflict that you felt with assigning, because I think you go back 15, 20 years and secondary breaks. That's in college. That's all we would do, 5 trips just all the time. And when you have this pattern that you're doing in numbers and places that guys have to run, it always made sense to me that assigning it would make it faster, because there'd be no question of what they do or where they go. But then, like in this kind of pursuit of fast basketball, and wanting to always, like, that's why I was really heavy into the Grinnell stuff, really heavy into Loyola Marymount, watching videos, reading books, because I feel like those guys understood, guru of go, like playing faster better than anybody else, but closest guy, because if you say, okay, your 5 is going to inbound it, and for us, sometimes our 5 was a guard. Like, what if our 5 is 20 feet away? That ball bounces. It takes time. What if it makes more sense for my 2, who's on that left side, just to keep going that way? And my 3, why do they have to cross? Like, what am I doing that is slowing us down? And it goes back to simplicity. Get in a circle around the rim, throw it through. Closest guy to it grabs it out of the net, doesn't let it bounce.
Yeah.
Next closest guy, if they're, who was it? Mark Cassio, I think, had a great question. He just asked his guys before the season, who's not a point guard? Who doesn't feel like they're not a point guard? And those dudes that raise their hand, you can't bring it up. And it's okay, like, no problem.
Yeah.
But if it's not one of them, it's the next closest dude, high and wide, butt to the sideline, and then try to up it to somebody more dangerous. But the coach, that was a big change, going from what I thought was more efficient to was faster, was letting it happen by the closest guy.
Yeah. And you're right, because we had that argument in, coaching circles, like, well, it's got to be your 4 or your 5. It has to be, because the 2 and the 3 have to fill the wing, like, but no, like, if I look up and there's nobody ahead of me, I'm filling that wing.
Yep.
And if you look up and there's nobody ahead of you, you're filling that wing. If somebody's there, then you've got another place to go. So yeah, it took some change of thought pattern, because everything was just dictated. And Dean Smith's secondary break was, the end all be all, and it was great, but things, you adapt and things change.
And obviously, you can still play fast. And fast isn't just how fast you're running up the floor, because you could play fast. You could sprint across half court, stop and hold it, and run a play. And I would argue you're not really playing fast anymore.
Yeah.
So, and to me, playing fast is, and you said it, like, get it and go, but that doesn't mean taking a quick shot. But there's a level of fast in there that says, to me, the best shot as fast as possible, or as quick as possible. That as possible really is dictated by maybe our spacing, where guys receive the ball. Are they dangerous or not? Are they open or not? How we're being guarded. If it's a good defensive team, our quick shot may be 15, 20 seconds into the possession. And then you kind of go down another rabbit hole of shot selection, because in my opinion, that's the first thing that you have to get established with your team.
See, I was about to ask you that. I find on basketball boards, younger coaches tend to have a hard time with shot selection. Does everybody on your team have the same shot selection?
Coach, I think the best thing I ever did, and this is a plug for PGC, was getting back in with them, directing for them a little bit, but you don't have to direct from them. But go, as a coach, you need to go and be an observing coach at a PGC session. And I would do point guard college. I would go watch that one, because that can really help you to transform your team's habits and culture. But then the shooting college, and in the shooting college, when I started to direct those, they taught us the shot scale. And it's, to me, you show me how a team deals with shot selection, I think that's directly tied to their culture. A good culture has strong shot selection rules. A bad culture has no concept of what a good or bad shot is. And there's going to be conflict in that. It's the most personal thing to every player. And what do we hate as coaches or players listening to coaches is vague language, like, let's get a great one. Let's get a good one. Hey, no bad shots right now. Johnny, that's a bad shot. Timmy, great shot. Keep shooting it. They all mean different things.
Yeah.
And you're sitting there saying, hey, guys, no bad shots. Well, little Timmy's sitting there going, he's not talking to me. Right? Like, we got to be, that's what loses games? One bad shot a quarter. One bad shot a quarter due to poor shot selection loses more games than anything else. lose by 8 points or less, shot selection. That's it.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's the most important thing. So the PGC scale, just real quick, is no such thing as a 10. Ask them if they've ever missed an open layup, and we all raise our hands. Or a great question to ask your team is, what's a 10? You'll get 3 or 4 different answers. So right off the bat, like it's something we have to be on the same page with. A 9 is a wide open layup. And I'll tell even though we're known for shooting threes, I tell my guys, the secret is that we love layups. Like threes, we love layups. We'll use that 3-point line as smoke and mirrors almost to spread them out. We were playing Westbury years ago and heard the other guy yell, all they want to do is shoot threes. And I remember looking at my guys going, exactly. Like, that's it. Like, now attack the paint, right? Like, so we love layups, open layups. And then skip 8s real quick, we go to 7s. A 7 is a wide open jump shot within their range. Within their range is where, to me, coaching comes in. I have to help players know what their range is. The way that we do that is shooting games and all different types of shooting games, but tracking. And tracking can be writing things down, but it can also mean we have these magnets that guys can get if they win a shooting game. Tracking can be raise your hand if you made this many or more. All right, keep your hands up, this many. And that's tracking. It's role identification. When little Timmy keeps dropping his hand and that dude's hand always stays up, okay, which one's really a 7? And so those are the main 2. We go to 8s. 8s is a contested layup. Still like 8s because a strong player going off of 2 feet can get fouled on an 8.
Yeah,
You can finish. You can finish through contact on an 8. You can be clever with 8s and use fakes and do things. So we still love 8s. Then we go to the 2 shots that lose games, and those are 5s and 6s. 5 is a 50-50 shot. And when I first started doing PGC, I would say if you wouldn't bet $20 on it, don't shoot that shot. Well, at Grapevine Faith, I don't think $20 is a lot to these kids. So I try to find like, hey, if you wouldn't bet 1,000 on it, but that 50-50 shot right there, I do give them some ideas of what I believe they are, but it's not a hard, fast rule. A step back to me is a 50-50 shot. A floater, not a fan. I think it's a 50-50 shot. And we don't play against 7-footers. Like, I get it. Trae Young needs a floater. He's too small. Those dudes are too big. But that shot, the level of difficulty and how long it takes to master it to where it becomes what I would consider a 7, or an 8 if it's in the layup world. It's hard, but we got to go through what some of those 50-50 shots could look like. But the 6s are the hard ones. That's a contested jump shot. 5s and 6s. So to me, it makes coaching shot selection really easy. We're hunting for 7s, 8s, and 9s, and we're giving up 5s and 6s. And so from a coaching standpoint, instead of saying, it's a bad shot, stop taking bad shots, I say, Johnny, rate that shot. And I say, like, just like that, rate that shot, coach. It's a 6. It was contested. You know what, John? I agree. I think it was a 6. There's 2 ways we can go with that. We can say, why'd you feel like you needed to take a 6? Well, coach, I haven't touched it in a long time. Or Timmy's taking 6s. Like, you get to the heart of, okay, like, we need to get back to humility, which is one of our pillars. Like, humility says, I'm not going to do something like that because other guys, my feelings aren't going to get hurt on shot selection. I'm going to continue to choose the right shot, even if they're not. But they give me the other reason to ask that question of why do you feel like you had to shoot a 6 is, well, coach, I actually thought he was farther away. Next one, I won't shoot that 6. And it gets you to lead down another path. Is like, what can you do instead of the 6? Well, I could lift and I could go by. Exactly. So instead of feeling like you're forced to shoot the 6, there's other opportunities that you have. I think when it's disarming like that, you get players doing what you want, which is to shoot good shots, but it's not personal. It doesn't take their confidence away. And then as coaches, like, I think if, you really want to go down the running and gunning, route, a 7, we talked about, demanding being outside of winning and losing. I think shot selection is outside of making and missing. You can miss 9 7s in a row, and if you look at me, or if you turn down a 7, we're gonna have a problem. Like, shoot the next one. Odds are what's about to happen. Wow, coach, we're about to go off, right? Like, you shoot to get hot, you shoot to stay hot. It's not just a corny line. It's an actual way of thinking that enables you to shoot freer, to shoot with this crazy confidence that to other people, it doesn't seem like you should have that. To go back to your original question, does everybody get to shoot? No, not the same amount. And here's what I've seen about the fear of a free and open style of play is they feel like the bad players will take the majority of the shots. The same way that if you don't assign somebody to inbound the ball, that just anybody's going to go do it. Hierarchies, Jordan Peterson would be proud. Hierarchies happen. Players start to figure out where they line up. Coach, even though I don't say it, the same guys bring the ball up the floor almost all the time. Even though I don't dictate it, the same dudes are taking the majority of the shots. And this is 11 years now at Faith, but me and Wes Watson were doing this where we never knew going into games exactly where shots would come from, but it never failed at the end. The best ones had the most of them. And if we've shot 63s in games before here, I'm good with almost 56 of them. Like, there's maybe a couple. You could even go down another rabbit hole with what are truly 6s, because if we teach shot preparation and shot speed enough in practice, if you pause shots when the contest happens, most of the time the ball's out of their hands. So I would say those are 7s, even though, like, to your eye and the time, those are 6s. The last, I don't know how many minutes, I blacked out for a second, but that's your fault because you.
No, I love that. I just learned something that I'm going to put to use now. See,
it's the best thing. It's freed me up.
Awesome. And I like it. It's not personal. It's like, hey, rate that
shot.
They own it and learn from it. Man, that's incredible.
And in a timeout, it's like, guys, like last few possessions, I think we've taken some 6s. And instead of making that decision, let's keep moving it. Let's attack the paint. And if it's really one player, you bring them over, demanding, not demeaning. You bring them over real close. Like, I think you're forcing some 6s right now. And I think it's a few things. Like, do you trust your other teammates with the ball? You get to the heart of it more than just resulting quick. That's a bad shot. You're a dumb player. You suck. And then ultimately, too, like Bobby Knight said, I mean, best way to get your point across is the bench. But I feel like that is after we've exhausted a lot of questions to get to the heart or the root of it.
Yeah, that's great stuff.
What's up, Coach? Are you looking for a way to elevate your off-season skill development? Well, look no further. With the Bology app, you can build a workout with our library or create your own content. Send that workout to your players, and then your players complete the workout by recording their session on their phones. You can monitor and encourage competition with our leaderboards for every workout. Bology offers player development solutions in the palm of your hands. Get your team started today by going to Bology.com for more info.
Wow.
Coach, I appreciate you listening to me. I
appreciate your time, man. I've
probably cut all that out, and let's get to the speed round here. These are going to be quick questions. First thing that pops in your head, just go ahead and blurt it out.
All right.
Favorite ice cream flavor?
Vanilla.
Greatest shooter of all time?
Pete Maravich.
See, I get you easy with the ice cream one, and then I bring in a hard one. And I love your answer. Probably my favorite player and influenced my skill work, the love of skill work with homework basketball back in the day.
Yeah. I averaged 44 a game, and there wasn't a 3-point line.
If they did it, like the math, it would have been over 50.
Yeah.
Closer to 60 points.
I think Dale Brown did that. Like, it was like 56, maybe 58 a game.
And obviously, like those arguments have really come out lately because of Caitlin Clark. which
Yeah.
it gets really, I think, to more of a culture thing of having to compare. Like Caitlin Clark, incredible, awesome for basketball,
No doubt.
leading scorer in women's basketball history. If you do the math with Pistol Pete, it doesn't compare, but it doesn't have to. Like, it's great. He was great. She was great. Basketball's great. Let's go.
See, comparison's the thief of joy, and that's exactly what it's doing right there.
No doubt.
Yeah.
But man, the Twitter, the X people, they love going down those. And I just sit back and watch. I try not to get into it, but
It's so much easier to call it Twitter, isn't it?
it is. X is, yeah, that's a letter.
Like,
It's a,
yeah. Formerly called Twitter.
yeah. Which I gotta celebrate you on how active you are on X, sharing, great videos or nuggets that you hear. I think you do a great job of celebrating other coaches, and it can be divisive, and there's a ton of negative stuff with social media, but I feel like guys like you use it in a good way.
Well, I try to, and I think that's the selling point about it is you can use it as a positive. You can be a life breather and bring energy and positivity around. And I try to stay away from the negativity. There's just no time for that.
No time for that. Favorite gym that you've ever coached in?
That's really that I've ever coached in. I guess I would have to say Chaparral Center in Midland College, because that's where this regional tournament was, and it was, we made it 3 years in a row there, and it's a great place.
Nice.
Wanted one more win to go to the Frank Irwin Center, but we didn't quite make it.
I think this is a separate question. Let's take a break from the speed round. Just made me think of something, because you get to hear guys like, did you ever win a state championship?
No.
Okay. So I figured that from what you said, but you listen to guys like Chuck, Charles Barkley, you think about the Patrick Ewing and those great players, Stockton, Malone, that great careers, never won it. What is that feeling? Because the odds are most of us won't, when it's all said and done. 40 years, tons of wins. What's it like not having won one in that time?
Our oldest son played for me. It was his senior year when we made it to the regional finals, and man, we thought we had a good chance. That's what hurt the most, is just seeing him hurt. But Shallow Water played a great game, and they were better than us that day. So I don't know. It's if you focus on that one thing, it can be a downer. Yeah, I don't look back a whole lot.
Too many positives.
Keep looking forward and just try to keep making positives. If you're only in it for the wins, like, you can never win enough. And if I would love to have a state championship ring, obviously, because we're competitors, But if I won one, like, would that be enough? But I need 3. But I don't know when it ends at that. So I'm content with trying to make a difference and trying to, like, each year, trying to get a group of guys to become a team. And that's really a hard thing to do, because there's so much selfishness, and you try to get that out and put, we before me in there. And so I, like, every year is a new battle, and a new challenge. And so that's good.
It's good. Best basketball movie of all time?
Hoosiers.
Texting or talking?
Talking.
Yeah.
Face to face if possible, because then
Yeah.
you really can get the feel for what's being meant by what's being said.
Favorite holiday?
Thanksgiving. It's family, good food, but there's no expectation of gifts.
Yes, that's true.
Togetherness. Yeah.
Yeah, I know that it's a lot less stressful holiday for the men out there. I just because, like, what do I get my wife? Thanksgiving. Up 3 on defense with 5 seconds left. Do you foul or no foul?
We don't. I trust our defense. Pretty defensive minded, more than offensive minded, and we just feel like we've worked on that, and we feel good about it.
Yep.
I've knock on wood, never lost one of those yet.
What book would you give someone besides the Bible?
Man, I've got a lot of good ones. I would say Buster Olney's How Lucky You Can Be, the story of Coach Don Meyer. It's an awesome one.
Couple more. Your favorite place to travel?
We like to cruise. We like to go on cruises, mainly in the Caribbean. I don't know how you say it, but it's a nice getaway. My wife really likes it because she gets pampered. No cooking. There's no laundry. It's just like out. But we'd like to do that. Mountains and beaches are good always. So if it's with family, it's good.
Yeah. Last one. In basketball, who's the GOAT as a player?
Michael Jordan. But I'm a Bill Russell guy too. I grew up like idolizing Russell and
Winning.
championship. Yeah, he's something else.
I heard the other day, and this was more in the LeBron versus Jordan debate, and it was how many times gone to the finals versus how many times lost in the finals. So Jordan's 6-0, LeBron's not close to that, but that was the reason that it catapulted Jordan past LeBron. But I've had a few guys say Russell, and those championships hard to debate that.
Yeah, those Celtic teams are good, but Michael Jordan's the greatest player of all time. If Coach Knight says that, then who am I going to argue?
Love the stories that he had of Jordan. I've been able to watch a few of those clips, and something about he was mad about Jordan and screening it because he couldn't figure out anything else. And Jordan's like, Coach, I was just too fast. I was screening. You didn't see me or something like that. I don't know. I probably butchered that, but
no, it's really close. And Coach Knight, he would tell some great Michael Jordan stories at camp. So that was part of the fun of that.
Coach, this was so enjoyable. I just want to say thank you so much for giving up your time talking hoops with me, but then sincerely, just for the last 40 years, what you've done for so many players, not just your coaching tree, but the amount of coaches and players that you've impacted. I got to imagine when it's all said and done, and like we talked about at the Bama, when we're looking to see the lives that you've impacted, there's going to be just countless thousands. So I thank you so much.
Well, I was nervous to begin with, but you made it really easy. You do a great job, Coach, and I'm honored to have been on here with you, and thank you so much.
If anybody wants to follow you, because I did mention on Twitter, I think you do a really good job, or talk hoops with you, what's a good way for them to do that?
They can find me on Twitter or X or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
I think I'm at Coach D Galyean, Galyean. So I welcome you to follow me. I try to be positive about everything and just share good things that are going on in the world. My cell number is 254-631-9598. If they like to text, I can give them my email if they got things to share that way. But yeah, I'm always glad to talk basketball and try to learn something like I learned from you, the shot selection today.
PGC. That's man. I give them all the credit. Coach, thank you so much for this.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you for checking out today's episode. Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast, share it with your fellow coaches, and find us on social media for what's coming up next on the Jamodi podcast. It's just a matter of doing it.